Hello, everyone. Welcome. Today is May 28th, 2022. I'm here on Skype with Michael, and we are about to delve back into Michael's script. And he has a new topic today. It is a biblical view on conspiracies, part number 33. And the title is 33 Again. Welcome, Michael.
Yeah, welcome, dear Brett. Hello, dear listeners. Sometimes I ask myself why I'm going into this kind of stuff in detail, because some things seem to be never ending, and Kennedy case is one of them. Because I would probably estimate that we are in the middle of anything. But I know, because I did that session that we are doing today 2 days ago in German. And I know that my colleagues there were very delighted, or at least satisfied with the content. So maybe that will bring some new light for people, or some new knowledge to people, that everything is a mess out there, which is actually not since Kennedy, but since the beginning of time, since mankind had fallen. And I'm sorry, but you won't find much of biblical text and passages in that session here. That has also a very special reason, because I want to close down the Kennedy Ritual, because then from next episode on we will go into a certain aspect of the assassination of your president. So this is the last part, so to speak. But of course, we did not go into the day of the assassination, how they did it, or how they most probably did it, or what else, all the kind of information around, and that will be maybe more interesting than the killing or the assassination itself. But this is, on my behalf, the last part of the Kennedy Ritual, part 8, 33 again. Well, let's start. I am about to start, but my computer actually, he wants to have a little bit of break. No.
There you go.
Don't believe everything the media is telling you, because the media is just telling you the things that you ought to know, but not the truth, actually, on several occasions. It's just one prime example here, mentioning the former Minister of Foreign Affairs handing over and now presenting to the world that these are the weapons of mass destruction from the Iraqi dictator Saddam Hussein, etc., etc., etc. And you see that you can fill dozens of sessions on that thing alone. And he later regretted, and he apologized for that. But that small, minor lie, this official lie, because they knew that that was nothing to it, no substantial evidence. So they knew that it has nothing to do with it, but that did cost hundreds of thousands of people their lives. Yeah? And then you get an excuse. That man did not get sued for that. Huh? He's a diplomat. He's got immunity. Whatever that means. Okay, so, but he has died also lately. So let's get it on.
Yeah, that's right, Michael. I was just going to mention that he had passed away recently.
Yeah. This is very recent here. This is from this month, May 2022, preparing for the next pandemic. Certain Mr. Nice Guy, William, and William is smiling when the official narrator says that we are planning for the next pandemic, and he was smiling all over the face, which means that oh yeah, he is smiling because of course he has set much money on that, and so he will be more richer and more richer and even more richer in the future. That's the only thing what counts for people who are only serving the mammon, because we know that there is only one possibility: either you serve God nor the mammon, right, Brett?
That's right.
Yeah, so you know them by the fruits. And sometimes you know them from their expressions. When somebody tells you, oh, there will be a next pandemic where a majority of people will be infected or will be dying, then who's laughing? The one who tries to protect and preserve life, or the one who is benefiting from death and disease? I think the answer is quite obvious. Yeah, but we are on the road to tyranny, we are on the road to the dictatorship, and the majority of people, they are just pretending not to see, not to hear, not to listen, not to say, and so these are then sheeps and just running into all the mess. That's what I told lately to some German sisters. I said, you see, that it's not the problem with the church. It's also not the problem with the Jesuits or whatever kind of order you would like to come with. The problem is the ignorant people.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Otherwise, these people would not be so successful.
And let's be perfectly clear, Michael, that we were ignorant as well at one time and other times in our lives. And it's only by the grace of God we're able to see this. It's not easy.
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard. And consider yourself blessed by Almighty God to get this message, because it's probably not going to last, Michael.
I think the people are more or less paralyzed out of fear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so let's just face it. If they got no foundation, they have been paralyzed by fear, and they say that, oh no, these mighty men, they will do the just thing. Yeah.
It's the fear of man, not the fear of God. That's the real biblical truth.
Yeah, so that was just the beginning. It has nothing to do at the moment with JFK, or has it? Because evil people are all around the world. This is a prime example. This is E. Howard Hunt, the one who was being involved in the JFK area during the presidency of JFK, and he was also one of the key members or the key factors in the Watergate scandal. And this is Mr. E. Howard Hunt with his gravestone. This is CIA, belonging to the CIA, 1946 to 1970, officially. Yeah, Papa and friend, and also spy. And he once said that we've always said, in an admiring way, that the Jesuits form the greatest intelligence service in the world. They always have. They always have. The Jesuits form the greatest intelligence service. Yeah. So once again, he's speaking the truth, because also he was speaking many, many interesting things, and he's an agent, so you don't know when he's lying and when he's just telling the truth. We were ending last time with the ritual from the Freemasons in the Dealey Plaza Temple of the Freemasonry, with the ritual of the Master Mason Hiram Abiff. And I told you that on that purpose, that the body of the so-called Master Architect Hiram Abiff has been put out of the temple into the city under a pile of rubble. They put then the President John F. Kennedy in some sheets and transported him outside the city of Dallas into the Bethesda Naval Hospital. The largest military medical complex. Oh, what a coincidence. Is not your not so beloved President Donald Trump constantly talking about the military industrial complex? Oh no, he says it's a swamp. Okay. Yeah, and so the name of Bethesda is a pool in Jerusalem. So it would fit the narrative that the Hiram Abiff character, which then was played by JFK, unknowingly, he was being transported out of the temple of Dealey Plaza into a pool in Jerusalem, which is then called the Bethesda Naval Military Hospital. That's part of the ritual. Because usually Hiram is presented as the chief architect of King Solomon's temple. So it is about King Solomon's temple. And he's murdered inside this temple. Of course, inside Dealey Plaza then. But then has been buried outside the temple. So he had to get away. He had to get out of the temple. And Bethesda, you see, that was in old times in the epistles of, or not in the epistles, in the book of John 5. It was a place of healing, Bethesda. So then we will go to the English thing. It is interesting because you can fill dozens of sessions that also the wounds are totally different. When it comes down to Dallas Hospital, you see that they have painted that kind of an entry or a wound on the back of the head, and in the Bethesda it's totally intact. Huh? How can that be? That seems like magic, huh? Magic. Oh, now you see my least favorable flyouts here.
Mm-hmm.
And in Dallas, he's got only a small wound, which is then about 5 times larger when he appeared in the Bethesda hospital. And when he appeared at the Bethesda, the brain was missing. So don't be, by any means, be surprised that there is a brain missing. And don't be surprised if somebody, just for the idea of it, somebody would be in the possession of part of the brain of John F. Kennedy as a trophy. I would reckon that there are many, many, many extremely wealthy and highly influential people out there who've got a collection of strange items all around the world, just to present to somebody who wants to be in an official position or have to be served under these people. So just in case, I will show you some these people can show you some artifacts and frighten the people to death. Yeah, this is just, I don't know if that is a theory or this will be published sometimes, but it has to be somewhere, hasn't it? And I know that part of his brain has been carried by his younger brother, but they never did an autopsy of the brain. Huh? Bullet fragments, somebody? So it is extremely strange. And it has nothing to do with Lee Harvey Oswald because he was in custody at that time. Yeah, so he had not the influence to order somebody to extract the brain from the American president. We know that part of the brain of the skull, so to speak, has been blown away by that impact. But nevertheless, you see, you won't find any kind of brain when there would be no brain when you arrived at Dallas. So the departure or the missing brain has to be somewhere between Dallas and Bethesda and not on the way from the Didi Plaza to the Parkland Hospital in Dallas. And that is a no-brainer, so to speak. Yeah, so somebody who had an extremely high official rank has gotten rid of that brain. That is the only logical explanation. So that means that a highly official government must be responsible, must be included in the attack or in the assassination. So that is the only logical conclusion. It could not be a lone gunman because they did something with the body, and it's not that only difference between the size of the wound, between a brain and no brain, and between the president being wrapped in ordinary sheets and then later on arriving in the Bethesda as in a zippered body bag, and also then leaving Dallas on the presidential airplane, Code Angel, in a ceremonial casket, and then arriving at Bethesda as a shipping casket, huh? Of course, people who are really into this kind of stuff, they know what could be the logical outcome. And that has to be with the famous theory of JFK and also the other one who died at the same day. It was the police officer J.D. Tippit. Because many people claim that these people are almost lookalikes. And that would be a reasonable idea that bodies have exchanged. But it's just a thing that I'm not going into because I cannot prove anything, of course. But that government involvement is quite obvious because that even the Zapruder film, which is known to everybody around the world, so it seems, has been unreleased for more than 4 years, unless in 1968 the Jim Garrison has then put up a new investigation for that JFK assassination. So they had more than 4 years to alter any pictures, which they did. And we will go into the Zapruder film also in detail soon. So coming back to the ritual of the Master Mason. Then the candidate is wrapped in a blanket and carried away. Yeah, that's the same which happened to the corpse of Kennedy in Dallas. He arrived in ordinary sheets, or he left also in ordinary sheets. So sorry, he left in ordinary sheets. Yeah. So, and they wrapped the candidate in a blanket and carried him outside. You see that these are most likely ordinary sheets. This is nothing special here. And you see, this is a ritual of grown men to initiate somebody at the third degree of being a Master Mason. Yeah, so grown men are playing to be murdered to get the third degree in something. Okay, yeah, it's sometimes it's hard, but these people are doing it for real because they want to belong to a secret society. And then their mark is grave with the sprig of acacia. I have not gotten into this because I just want not to go into every detail, but maybe there's also sprig of acacia in the JFK assassination. I have not found anything yet, but that does not mean that it's not there. And so the people left the room here, and the so-called dead Hiram Abiff character here is now being on the floor and of course pretends to be dead. But that was the same what happened to Mr. Kennedy, at least that he was dead for real. Yeah, so King Solomon also has been played by the worshipful master of the lodge. So you see that it's also the head of the temple has been involved. And this is a real ritual here, and I don't know if they have played it out correctly here, but that's not of my concern. It is just that you have to see that these are grown men believing into fairy tales, into legends, which has nothing to do with the Bible, because in the Bible, Hiram Abiff has not been murdered, or Hiram Abiff is not present, because there is no Hiram Abiff. It's also Hiram, the son of a widow. But there are many sons of a widow. Yeah, and it has nothing to do with that Hiram Abiff character, because it has not been portrayed in the Bible that he was being attacked or murdered or something else. Yeah, and these fugitives they then turned back into Ireland, and then they were searched by the king. And about 15 symbolic days later, I found that very interesting, Brett. 15 days. And then they captured the 3 fugitives and takes them to King Solomon. Yeah, and Solomon then was judging them, and so the story goes. But then he asked the 3 guys where the grave is and all the things, and so much so for the ritual. The problem is now that I don't want to promote any kind of Freemasonry here. I just want to point out some things which will help in understanding how that ritual went and how they got away with the killing of your president. And that it has nothing to do, absolutely nothing to do with a lone gunman. So there are 3 ruffians with the names of Jubilah, Jubilo, and Jubilum. Mr. Albert Pike, himself being a 33-degree Freemason, he says that the legend of Hiram Abiff has been played out by 3 names, Jubilo, Jubilah, Jubilum, who were corrupted names. And I said, well, that's interesting, because now look at here in the real history, or in the real line of events, the early allegation was that the 3 ruffians consisted of E. Howard Hunt and Frank Sturgis. Later on, it was Charles Harrison, Charles Rogers, and Chauncey Hort. And the authority explanation, 29 years later, from the Dallas Police Department, was then Gus Abrams, Harold Doyle, and John Gedney. Yeah, so nobody plays straight in that game. They will hide the things unless the things are too obvious to be covered anymore. Yeah, so Albert Pike, I have a hard time with him, because I know that he was supposed to be a high-ranking Freemason, but it's a big but. There is an official letter, so to speak, to a certain Italian Freemason called Giuseppe Mazzini, an Italian politician, journalist, and activist for the unification of Italy and spearhead of the Italian revolutionary movement in 1872. The problem, what I have got, is that I know that is a supposed letter between 2 Freemasons. So how am I supposed to know that that is really authentic and real? Because he told them in that letter the Third World War must be fomented between the Christians and the Islamic world. The war must be conducted in such a way that Islam and Christianity mutually destroy each other, leaving the political Zionists in control. And I got a hard time in believing that. Because if so, you speak with a high-ranking Freemason, which means that he's not speaking the truth. And also that has nothing to do with the real Christians here. It has something to do with the Catholics. Because Christians will not fight a war against the Islamic world. We Christians are to obey the 10 Commandments, not to kill anybody. And according to Jesus' preachings, we have to love our neighbor as ourselves. So when he's speaking here about Christianity, he obviously means Roman Catholicism. Can you back me up, Brett, or what?
Yeah, that sounds perfectly clear to me, Michael.
Yeah, so a long time ago, I told also another brother in Christ that I don't believe that the Roman Catholic Church will be in existence for a long time. I think that will be also sacrificed. But that is just my understanding at the moment. They have to come up with one world religion. One world religion. And I don't think they will call themselves the one world religion of the Roman Catholicism. And that's also the problem for many people, is because when you got rid of your enemy, yeah, whom you are protesting against, what will be left? If you don't understand or don't realize that the Bible is a spiritual book. And that the spirit of Antichrist is still in the working, even long before the Roman Catholic Church has been founded. That's also in John to be found in the Bible. But let's get back on the road to Kennedy. The Lost Keys of Freemasonry form another high-ranking Freemason called Manly P. Hall. That's the very book. All-Seeing Eye, Sun Rays, then the Freemasonic Handshake, Freemasonic Square and Compass. Manly P. Hall. Yeah, the same, of course, the same symbol as on the $1 bill. Yeah, so of course your country has been founded by Freemasons, and it's very interesting because that means also Annuit Coptis. I don't know if you are familiar with the explanation of Annuit Coptis. So I have to point it out in English actually. Annuit Coptis means he has favored our undertakings. Yeah, but who's he? You see, the he has been depicted here on top of the pyramid, or on top of the Freemasons, so to speak, with the all-seeing eye, or the one-eye symbolism. Yeah, and it's quite clear who it must be. Yeah, because it's on the same note. Yeah, in God we trust. So in God we trust that He favors our undertakings. Yeah, you see, that is on the same dollar note. Yeah. So it is God or the mammon. It's Matthew 6:24.
Matthew chapter 6, verse 24, no man can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will hold to the one and despise the other. Ye cannot serve God and mammon.
Yeah, we can copy that verse, Brett. Thank you. We can copy that verse under the image of your $1 bill for one world government, one world religion. You cannot serve God and the mammon. Yeah, why? I think they have put it here to fool the people. Actually, it must mean in mammon we trust.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
It's just deception, Michael. Same old thing as usual.
Yeah. So Manly P. Hall, in his Lost Keys of Freemasonry, he speaks, then we must first consider the murders of Hiram, these three ruffians who, when the builder seeks to leave the temple, strike him with the tools of his own craft until finally they slay him and bring the temple down in destruction upon their own heads. You got a severe problem with that, because the Solomonic temple was been finished according to the Bible and according to historical documents. Yeah, so you see, they are fooling the people here over and over again. symbolize the three expressions of our own lower natures, which are the truth, the murders of the goods within ourselves. You see, this is all pure deception here. This is their Freemasonic philosophy, so to speak. And that's why I'm not going into this, because I don't like Manly P. Hall's writings. I find him so openly funny, and it's just funny. There's nothing substantial in it. It's just a part of legend, a part of fairy tales for adults. Yeah. So the victim, Hiram Abiff or JFK, he is injured by the first two assailants and struck dead by the last. Yeah. Remember Walter Cronkite. Here's a bulletin from CBS News. In Dallas, Texas, 3 shots were fired as President Kennedy motorcade in downtown Dallas. 3 shots. It was right from the beginning until this very day that there can only be 3 shots, because it's just 3 assailants or 3 ruffians. And it's very interesting with 3, because also you got 3 nails here, or 3 wounds, in the sun symbol of the Jesuits. And it's more interesting because a long time ago I stumbled upon a video of the Seventh-day Adventist called Jim Arabita.
The Romans formed this arrow as a symbol of the sun and sacrificed Christ by nailing these arrows through his flesh. The church has taken these 3 arrows, a symbol of the 666 God, and placed them above and on their altars and in their windows and on their floors. Everywhere you look, you'll see this symbol of 666. Here it is holding up a chalice. Chiesa del Gesù floor, and here's a whole monstrance that's only made of these sexual symbols of arrows.
And Jim Arabito, I really like very much about all his explanations and all his dedication to his work. Unfortunately, he is a Seventh-day Adventist, so there are many doctrines of the Seventh-day Adventists which are absolutely untrue and unbiblical. Yeah, so the judgment thing, for example, and many other things. But the problem with Jim Arabito is also that he was speaking very freely, and he was dying in a plane crash. And that is also very obvious, or very suspicious, if you like to say so. You know who also died in a plane crash, Brett? It was the wife of E. Howard Hunt, the CIA agent, when he was about to witness against the Watergate the Watergate court. His wife was dying in a plane crash. And she was carrying, if I remember correctly, a huge amount of money. And there are several interesting facts about that. So there are many, many people who had plane crashes. Also, Mr. John F. Kennedy Jr., he died of a plane crash. So the history of plane crashes of very important people is very long in the United States of America. So IHS also carrying 3 wounds, or 3 shots, or 3 strikes. And what were JFK's last words? Last words, according to the one and only Nellie Connelly, the First Lady of Texas, turned to Kennedy, who was sitting behind her on the Elm Street, and commented, "Mr. President, you can't say Dallas doesn't love you." And Kennedy's reply, according to her testimony, was, "No, you certainly can't," were his last words. Interesting enough, when somebody has last words are, "No, you certainly can't." I don't know if he has grasped her comment correctly, because it can also mean something else. It's just a play of words here now, and we are going then into Kennedy full force, but it's just a play of words here, because I came across the strange fact that it can't mean also another thing. Yeah, if you would say that Dallas doesn't love you, see that a city cannot love you. Yeah, but the inhabitants or the population of the city can love you, but Dallas doesn't love you. But what if Dallas would be an individual? I know he's called Adam Dulles, but Dulles doesn't love you. Dallas doesn't love you. Dulles doesn't love you. Dallas doesn't love you. But it's just a play of words, of course. Just a play of words. So back to the ritual. His mothers hide the body under a pile of rubble, returning at night, of course, to move the body outside the city, when they bury it in a shallow grave marked with a sprig of acacia. So that is that, meaning that they had to get rid out of the city. What they did when they said that by any means we have to take the corpse of Kennedy to another hospital, so that he could not stay in Dallas on that very day of the assassination. So the ceremonial ritual was still in the working. The problem is that Hiram, king of Tyre, is clearly distinguished from Hiram Abiff. The former is clearly a king and the latter clearly a master craftsman. They can be confused in other contexts, and that is one of the purposes of Freemasonry, to confuse the people. Order ab chaos. Yeah, so order out of chaos. So it has no biblical content whatsoever. There is a Hiram out of Tyre who was a widow son of the tribe of Naphtali. Yeah, but this was not, he was not slain at the temple or something else. No historical records. This is just a legend of the Freemasons, and I have to skip all that so that you won't be confused also. You can look that up in your own Bible and you won't find any Abiff, and you won't find any truth that the King Solomonic Tyrant has not been finished. Yeah. The common translation of the I suffix is my, so my brother Hiram can also mean Hiram Abiff. Hiram, my master craftsman, in the New King James Bible. Oh, interesting, huh? So they have to alter the things. The common translation of the I, Abiff, suffix is my, given the problematic reading that Hiram was sending his own father, also called Hiram. This is found in the Vulgate, the Douay-Rheims Bible, and Wycliffe's Bible. And what do we know about the three types of Bibles, Brett?
Well, Michael, for one, my screen sharing is really acting up today. I have to refresh and refresh and refresh.
Or shall I?
No,
shall I do
it's
it
fine.
once?
Just keep going.
Okay.
But yeah, we have a huge problem since you know, the Bible was altered in 1870 with this revision. I should say it was past 1870. I think it was 1878 or something, with a new revised standard version, and then the other corrupted versions followed suit after that point. So what was your question again, Michael?
The common translation given the problematic reading is found in the Vulgate, Douay-Rheims Bible, and the Wycliffe's Bible. And I don't think that these three Bibles are being recommended by us.
No.
Yeah, these are
Not
corrupted
at all.
texts. Yeah.
Well, you know, the
translation.
Wycliffe Bible, he was starting out with a, you know, obviously using the Latin Vulgate, right? So he was just taking the Latin Vulgate and translating that into English, which is a good start for, it's still a corrupted Bible, but it's still, you know, a start. It's all he had. So yeah, the Reformation is a big topic, Michael. I mean, that's really what you're looking at here, is the time where Wycliffe had passed away and his followers were, you know, preaching from the Wycliffe Bible, and the Catholic Church had to deal with the heresy, so they had to root it out. And yeah, it's a big trouble. Big trouble when you change the Word of God. I mean, that's kind of the problem here from the beginning. So,
So you won't find the truth. You won't
not
find
there.
the truth. You only find the truth in the Bible, which means that in the Bible it will not be depicted that the legend of the Freemasonry has any substantial evidence. No, not one. not one, not two, not anything. So I'm just going on because you don't want to see all the lies. You want to see some truth, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, you just think about Bibles. The Freemasons have their own King James version. Don't you dare trust it.
Yeah, but that's not the only book which is laying on their altar in the temple. It's also the Quran. So
yeah, right.
They don't care as long as you believe in any supreme being, and you see that you can also believe in some angels or so, supreme being. Yeah. It's just hilarious because they don't care as long as you believe in some supreme being. But what kind of supreme being they are believing in, they won't tell you in the third degree.
Oh, of course not.
Because in the third degree, it seems to be that it has everything to do with the God of the Bible, hence the remark of the King Solomon temple. And that's the deception there. William Cooper does recommend a book called Born in Blood, The Lost Secrets of Freemason from John J. Robinson. And that has been explicitly on page 18, 666, about the legends of the murder Hiram Abiff. The rule, customs, and traditions of the Templars provided answers to all those of mysteries. Next came a deeper analysis of the old charges of ancient masonry, that define a secret society of mutual protection. And that is a very interesting book. I would recommend that book because it goes absolutely deep into the history. Because also the papacy condemned the Freemasonry after the Freemasonry has revealed themselves in 1717, and then culminated in the bull Humanum Genus promulgated by Pope Leo the 13th in 1884. Yeah, so of course it is very cool when they have a scapegoat, for the Roman Catholic Church, that the Freemason played a scapegoat, because behind the Freemasons there are other secret societies or not so secret societies, what the public is not aware of, because you see that the Freemasonry is using an incomplete pyramid. Yeah, so that means there are some levels above. If you see a Freemason pyramid, you see an unfinished pyramid. Yeah, so there are some levels on top, obviously. It's not only one on top, it seems that there are at least two more on top. But it's maybe just only my interpretation of things. Yeah, so that is a very interesting book. Gradually, the competition among Masonic historians to outdo each other in such fantasies died down. Oh, just we are reading that. As impressive, even legendary, as some of the actual Freemasons may be, they pale against revelations of early Masonic historians who claimed the Masonic membership for Adam, Abraham, Noah, Moses, Solomon, Ptolemy, Julius Caesar, and Pythagoras. One Masonic writer was incensed that some of his contemporaries expressed doubt about the claim of Masonic membership for Achilles, nor did the fantasy stop there. Claims were made to establish the origins of Masonry in ancient Egypt, and some traced Masonic sources to the Essenes, Zoroastrians, Chaldeans, and especially the Phoenicians, since they had been kind enough to sail to Britain to share their mysteries with the Druids, also claimed as predecessors of Freemasonry. Gradually, the competition among Masonic historians to outdo each other in such fantasies died down, and more sober voices were given a chance to be heard. The first great retreat was to the establishment of Freemasonry at the building of the Temple of Solomon, based upon a literal interpretation of an allegory, which, as we shall see, is central to the initiation ritual of a Master Mason. This theory was embellished to establish three original Grand Masters: King Solomon, Hiram, the king of Tyre, and a mythical Hiram called Hiram Abiff. Masonic writers have tried to identify Hiram Abiff as the biblical Hiram, son of a widow of Naphtali, who was a master worker in bronze, a skill he used to cast the great pillars Jachin and Boaz that flanked the entrance on the outer porch of the temple. Their problem is that in Masonic ritual, the master builder Hiram Abiff is murdered and the Temple of Solomon is never finished, while the biblical account says that the temple was indeed finished, and as far as we can tell, Hiram the metal worker went home alive and well. The biblical account, in fact, provides no clue to the real origins of Freemasonry. If there was to be any valid revelation of Masonic origins in the building of King Solomon's temple, it would have to be drawn from the allegorical drama locked within the Masonic ritual. So it's all a spoof. It does not happen. It did not happen. Yeah. Before 1770, there were a true secret society, and then they were proclaiming in the open in 1717, and they got that papal bull then. So they were exposed as being, in my humble opinion, as a scapegoat to distract the public, the general public, from all the Roman Catholic knighthoods and from the Jesuits and from every other Roman Catholic order. Knights of St. John, etc. So the Freemasons were to blame. Yeah. Oh my, oh my, oh my, oh my, oh my, oh my. If you really believe that the papacy has nothing to do with Freemasonry, you will be so much deceived. You can't imagine. Do you see my screen, Brett?
I sure do.
Okay. So we know that Solomon had built the two houses, the house of the Lord, which was not that big, and the king's house, which was very big because it was his house, because he was the king, Solomon. Huh? And now you will ask yourself, oh my, well, so much of a time for all the BS. What for? Well, I won't go into Freemasonry. I will show you the real stuff, in my humble opinion. From several sources, I have found some very interesting things, which are also very key to learn in the ritual of the killing of the President Kennedy. You know that it's all a big BS about this so-called master masons. Yeah, but it's all about the three shots or the three ruffians. And so we have to keep an eye when they are fooling us, which we will sure do now. In the building of Solomon's temple, he was master mason at high 12 at noon when the men was gone to refresh themselves. As was his usual custom, he came to survey the works, and when he was entered into the temple, there were three ruffians, supposed to be three fellow crafts, planted themselves at the three entrances of the temple, and when he came out, one demanded the master's word of him, and he replied he did not receive it in such a manner, but time and little patience would bring him to it. He, not satisfied with that answer, gave him a blow which made him reel. He went to the other gate, where, being accosted in the same manner and making the same reply, he received a greater blow and a third in his quietus. Pritchard 7030. Well, you see, it was high 12. What kind of a day it was when your President Kennedy has been assassinated? It was official time is 12:30. So even the time is almost correct. What a coincidence, huh? So that the one who had set the route for the president to go to downtown Dallas, he absolutely knew when it was the right time to do so, because Kennedy arrived more or less at 11:30 plus minus on that very day in Dallas. He did not come to Dallas early in the morning. He did not come to Dallas in the afternoon or in the night. No, he came to Dallas. He was in the city of Dallas at high noon or high 12. High 12 is the same as high noon, Brett. Is it correct?
Yes.
Okay. The ruffians were identified by name, and the tools were identified as the setting maul, setting tool, and setting beetle. It was named the 24-inch gouge, a square, and a setting maul as the instruments utilized. Later publications, just as Jachin and Boas, utilized these names and working tools. So much so, 24-inch. Okay. Albert Pike asserts that the first ruffian represents royalty, which fears the patriot and sends these men to the scaffold. As such, the 24-inch gouge or rule, from the Latin regula, meaning to govern, is an appropriate symbol. He was struck across the throat with the rule to symbolize the silencing of the freedom of speech, which silence discussion, places a hold on the press, and forbids dissension. Aha, so that is the blow on the throat to JFK. The second ruffian represents the priesthood, which seeks to control inquiries and students of philosophy through the condemnations of heresy. Hiram struck on the breast, the area of the heart with a square. Here Pikes posits that the square, from Latin norma, meaning a rule of conduct, is representative of canon law, which claims the right to define and enact what all men shall believe. He offers that the angle of a square is symbolically where the spiritual and temporal powers of the Church unite. As the heart is the seat of convictions, faith, and conscience, so the blow is struck to suppress thought, opinions, and liberty. Lastly, the third ruffians represents the mob mind. This is a force which is organized and directed by a singular will, which is both blind and unreasoning. It is a symbol of brute force, as embodied in military despotism and in anarchy. And I said, oh, that is very interesting, because now we know that the ritual has been done incorrectly, at least if we go according to the Sapura movie. Once again, it is incorrect, because we know that there was supposed 3 shots or 3 wounds, but that does not represent the same, or you won't find that in the Kennedy Corps. Yeah, so I'm skipping all the things. It's just too much of information, because I don't want to promote Freemasonry here. I just want to find out the truth. You really have to learn so many lies to really realize what was going on. So, at the heart of our mysteries, there lies a legend of the Freemasonry, how 3 unworthy craftsmen entered into a plot to extort from a famous Freemason a secret which they had to know right, blah, blah, blah. Many think that the origins of Masonry and the ancient mysteries of Egypt they are. But many think also that the origins of the logo of the Jesuits are also the initials of Isis, Horus, and Set. And Brett and we highly doubt that. But it would be very interesting, because when you go according to the official narrative of the so-called truth movement or so, then you've been usually told that this is Iris, Horus, and Set. Yeah, the problem is that if they would refer to the ancient Egyptian Trinity, then they would have to be almost the same reference as Freemasonry, and that would be very interesting. But unfortunately, it's IHS and not IHO, because usually the Egyptian Trinity is Iris, Horus, and Osiris. And also not in that kind of an order, because why? Tell me why should a so-called Catholic order put a woman in front? Oh, marry anybody? Yeah, but you see that it does not make any sense, because if it would be Egyptian, then it would be Iris, Horus, and Osiris. Because usually Set was the killer or the murderer of Osiris. And then it would make sense, once again, but it's also deception, because I would highly doubt that it is Iris, Horus, and Set. I would refer to another event, because then it would mean that the Jesuits have in their logo, even if they would admit it, they're coming from an Egyptian Trinity, which they will never do. This is from the Code for Babylon sessions we did. And it would mean that they got in their logo the initial of a murderer. Can you think about that? In my humble opinion, it means in this sign I will conquer. In hoc signo. Nothing else, because it's a military order. It's a military order. Regimini militantis ecclesia in hoc signo vinces. In this sign, the sign of the cross, the sign of the sun, the sign of the crucifixion. And the sun rays. You see, there's the sun rays out here. Ugh. Sorry, this is a sun symbol. Everybody sees that it's a sun symbol. So back to our little big problem here. The 3 wounds represent the priest, the politician, and the mob. We know that the mob is the last one. But according to many explanations, it was the, where is my exclamation mark when I need it? Where is my exclamation mark? There's my exclamation mark. Yeah. Hiram was struck on the throat, then on the breast. And Albert Pike says that the square, so the second blow, is the representative of canon law. That is very interesting. So once again, so now the session is really into swing. Once again, Oswald has been accused of firing 3 shots at President Kennedy, but the problem is the first shot missed. And then a ricochet was hitting Mr. James Take, who was standing at a triple underpass. But that leaves only 2 shots. And this would not occur 3 blows or 3 wounds. Right, Brad?
Right.
So the official explanation of William Cooper in his ritual, The Sacrificed King, cannot be correct because he said there were 3 shots and 3 wounds, which is the first 6. But we only have 2 shots. We have 3 shots, of course, but they missed, so they are not 3 wounds. And that's why I think they had to come up with that so-called magic bullet. So that the magic bullet causes 2 wounds, one to Kennedy and the second to Mr. Connolly. Because then you got 3 wounds. You got the throat wound of Kennedy, you got the second wound of Connolly, and you got the third wound, the fatal headshot of Kennedy. These are 3 wounds. That's very interesting. Because there is also another explanation about that. But I think I will spare that to our final sessions on Kennedy, because then I think then you will come to your own conclusions, and then you will say you will see that I'm not a crazy nut here too, but I hope to be a reasonable thinker, that you really see that is absolutely spot on logical how they most likely did it. Because I don't think that Mr. Oswald did do any shooting, so I don't think that he did any shooting. And according to my information, also it was not been shot from the 6th floor window. But that's just my information at the moment. This is of course not the official information, because it had to be the 6th because of the numerology. Once again, the first strikes a blow at the throat, the seat of freedom of speech, and it is a mortal wound. The second strike at the heart, the home of freedom of conscience, and that is well fatal, since it puts out the last ray of divine light by which man is guided. Oh, what a kind of a speech here. And the third of the foul plotters fells his victim dead with a blow on the brain, which is the throne of freedom of thought. Okay. But that's a big problem, because you see that when it comes down to Kennedy, 1 wound is missing. Because it is about a Hiram Abiff ritual. It is not a ritual of killing anybody in the temple. It is about a Hiram Abiff ritual. So they had to create 3 wounds, or they had to count 3 wounds. If there will be 4 wounds, or 6 wounds, or 2 wounds, it would not be sufficient. It must be 3 wounds, because it is part of the ritual. So they came up with that magic bullet, and they came up with so many wrong explanations here. And that's also, I think, only because they found that shell, so they could not say that, oh, there was only 2 shots, because the majority of people, they heard 3 shots, actually. Or they had to hear 3 shots, according to the Warren Commission. But it gets more complicated. Because this is Freemasonry. You see, the bad guy, he's been called Typhoon. That is a spirit. Yeah, that is the depiction of Typhoon. It's half dragon with the wings and half snake, and with some awful heads here. Of course, looks like a scapegoat or a goat here. Yeah, so that's the depiction of satanic spirit, Typhoon. Yeah, and he is supposed to be living under the volcano called Etna in Italy, in Sicily. Sicily is where the mob is. No? Ask Mr. Mazzoni, the brother of Freemasonry, with the letter of Albert Pike. And in 2030, the United Nations Education, Science and Communication Organization, they had said that it's a world heritage. It's the Etna volcano. For what reason? Because it is a religious, has something to do with a religious item. Yeah, and also the German Friedrich the Great has been allegedly been buried under the Etna and sleeping there, and it's all the big BS. It's all a big BS because it's Freemasonry. The problem I got with many Freemasonry sources and quotes is that I know that these people are deceivers and they are not speaking the truth. For example, that Manly P. Hall had a 33-degree Freemason, but he was officially not a Freemason when he wrote his infamous books about Freemasonry. He was both a Theosophist and a Rosicrucian. Yeah, and that's not my main point, but my main point is that The Lost Keys of Freemasonry was written in 1923 when he was only 22. And that's what I came up with the idea of Sacro Bosco and all these mystical people there with ghostwriting. Yeah? So somebody wrote that book, highly likely for Mr. Manly P. Hall. You don't write books about that subject when you are 22. Come on. You're not serious when you think that anybody, when he's 22, he's not interested in girls, partying, cars, or what else, but in writing books about Freemasonry. Really, I highly doubt that. Yeah, and The Secret Teaching of All Ages was written in 1928 when he was 27. He was very young when he wrote that big book, The Secret Teaching of All Ages, or The Lost Keys of Freemasonry, when we have talked about the extract of Hiram Abiff. He was an honorary 33-degree Freemason. The Lost Keys of Freemasonry. You want me to go into these books and read all the books to you. I'm no professional reader, just that you see that all these books are existing and they all depict the Hiram Abiff, the Grandmaster Hiram Abiff, not the Grandmaster Flash, but Hiram Abiff. So you want to be a Grand Master. You don't want to accept Jesus Christ as your only master. You want to be a High Master or Grand Master. It's all the same, that you shall be as gods. The old lie of Satan in the form of the snake. Yeah, 3 ruffians who when the builder seeks to leave the temple, strike him with the tools of his own craft. Finally slay him and bring the temple down in destruction. This has nothing to do, because the Dealey Plaza has not been damaged after the killing of Kennedy, right, Brett?
Right.
Yeah, and also there is no emerald tablet of Hermes Trismegistus, which we have found out in our series Sciences and New Religion. Yeah, so it is all BS. And so now that I'm really sick of spending my time and your time of all that futile Freemason legends that is just like fairy tales for grown-ups. Yeah, so William Cooper says that Hiram Abiff is no builder, but a representation of the Knights Templars, Grandmaster once again, Jacques de Molay. Jacques de Molay has been slain, has been killed in Notre Dame as the Grandmaster of the Knights Templar when they were expelled and they were then being forbidden. And that's very interesting, because when you really see that the sovereign military order of Malta bears the same title, the Grand Master. Yeah, so I told you before that there are some steps above the pyramid of the Freemasonry, and as we know from former more than 32 sessions before, as we know that John F. Kennedy was a Knight of Columbus himself, and his father, Joseph Kennedy, was a Knight of Malta. These are Catholic organizations. And the Knights of Malta, in my experience, in my research, are standing on top of the Freemasons. So when there is a Freemasonic ritual going on in a Freemasonic temple in Dealey Plaza in Dallas, with the killing of a son of a Knight of Malta, at least the Knights of Malta have to be involved in that killing. Because for the hierarchy, because you see these are also Grand Masters here of Malta, but they are much more early, because the Knights of Malta is more or less a continuation of the Knights Templars. So that means that they are much more older than the official creation of 1717 of the Knight Templar, of the Freemasonry stuff. And Freemasonry is forbidden by the papacy. So that means that these orders are on top of the Freemasonry. So at least the Supreme Military Knight of Malta had to be involved in the killing of Kennedy. Somebody had to approve that the son of a high-ranking Knight of Malta has to be killed, at least when he when he is the recent official president of the United States. That's my conclusion of it. So that's the problem with it. Yeah, you see, they bear the same titles: the Grand Master of Knights Templars, or the Grand Master, the Grand Architect and Grand Master of Freemasonry. So that means that, in my humble opinion, it is the Sovereign Military Order of Malta. You know, the symbol of the CIA is on top of the Freemasonry. That means that the CIA can conduct also the ritual and can conduct and order also the Freemason how to do that. Yeah, because Freemasonry is not running the CIA, it is the Sovereign Military Order of Malta. And even one Sovereign Military of Malta member called Reinhard Gehlen, a former German spy general of the German Wehrmacht, of the German army in the Second World War, he was founding the CIA together with the Wild Bill Donovan. It's all Knights of Malta. So that means that the CIA is on top of Freemasonry. Yeah? And what a surprise. That means that the CIA is ordering all the Freemasons how to act in the Freemason ritual. And I think that is quite logic, isn't it? Mm-hmm. So that, so far to the CIA combination or CIA influence in the attack, because when they are being controlled by the Sovereign Knights of Malta, they also control the Freemasonry, and they have their own Dealey Plaza at their disposal. In my humble opinion, years before John F. Kennedy was being assassinated, they also got a plan to do so in case that any American president would then be not acting according to the orders of the superiors or the clergy. But that's just my opinion. I can prove it. At least when his presidential car was being manufactured, it has the resemblance of SS-100. Yeah, so in the Secret Service. Yeah, and 100 years, it's just a part between Lincoln and Kennedy, 1860 to 1960 inauguration. So I think that the car was been built on purpose for just in case. But if you find it too far-fetched, then you're free to go. I don't think so. I think that many things are being planned years in advance. Yeah, so Sovereign Military Order of Malta comes into play when it comes down to the killing of Kennedy in the form of the Central Intelligence Agency. And that means that the CIA is also then controlling the FBI, because the head of the FBI was being a certain J. Edgar Hoover, who was not a friend of the Kennedys, but the enemy of the Kennedys. And of course, he was then being ordered also by the CIA, because the Knights of Malta is more important and in the hierarchy one step above the Freemasonry. I will not back down from that, from my claim. Of course, in the final, for the final thing, you can't prove these things, but you see the emblem of the CIA. Yeah, and you know who has been founding that, and their heritage is much more older, and they're being seated, they're being now located, the Sovereign Military Order of Malta, not in the Maltese country, not in Malta anymore, but in the Vatican since more than 100 years. Yeah, so don't think for just one moment that Freemasonry is controlling the Sovereign Might of Malta, but the other way around. So in that book here, it's been stated that there is a mysterious universal agent referred to a Chiram, Hiram. That's very interesting, because why is Hiram now a Chiram? Because Chiram means brother. So a brother Mason. So very interesting. So Chiram, also been mentioned here, means actually Hiram. A universal agent, a Catholic agent referred to Chiram. Yeah, with the Tabula Smaragdina. Yeah, so the emerald table, which never existed, of course. Yeah. Chiram is a word composed of 3 words denoting the universal spirit, the essence whereof the whole creation does consist, and the object of Chaldean, Egyptian, and genuine natural philosophy, etc., 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 etc. They want me to go into this because I'm really sick of all the things of Freemasonry, because it's just a legend here and legend there. It has nothing to do with truth. It's really disgusting. So that's why we will keep up on our ritual. I'm sorry that I really have to bother you so much time.
No, well, this makes sense, Michael, actually, because, you know, when you study the history of the church, you might find that a lot of the ritual is of no biblical value. It's only there to distract the brethren from, you know, getting right down to the nitty-gritty. So there we go. I mean, that's the way I see it.
Yeah, sure. Especially
it's
when
deception all over again, you know?
You see, Freemasonry was being created in 1717. You see that who was running the world in 1717? It was not Freemasonry.
No.
This is just another distraction.
It's the monarchy.
Like the Rosicrucians, that's all distraction. That's all distraction. It's in final things, it's just to distract and to blame the Protestants. Yeah, to blame the Rosicrucians, to blame the Freemasons, to blame the Ku Klux Klan. It's always to blame Protestants, because these are more or less secret orders in Protestant countries, or so-called Protestant countries. Nowadays, it's there are no Protestant countries anymore. Yeah. Because there are people behind the people, and that is the really nitty-gritty of it. Yeah, the Mormons has also been under the yoke of the Jesuits. Yeah, Salt Lake City became to Mormons what Rome is to Catholics, and Jesuit Smith stands there among the founder statues. No, it's always some other people behind it. You see that when you compare the symbols in the Oval Office in the White House. You see that's a kind of a Venus shell behind, or maybe it's just one half of the sun rays, who knows. But anyway, you see it's a symbol of a pagan god. Yeah, what does that have to do with the representation of the community, of lay people? Nothing. You see here Martin Luther King, also a tool of the Jesuits. No? John F. Kennedy, who has sworn the Bible on the Bible for his inauguration on a Jesuit Douay-Rheims Bible. Or Lyndon B. Johnson, who has received also a prize of the Jesuits just a few weeks prior to the assassination. And he was also, years before, he was being officially known as a Knight of Malta. Tete. So even Lyndon B. Johnson could control or could have some insights about the ritual of the Freemason, because he was a Knight of Malta. That's what it's key to understand what is going on behind the scenes, because everybody of that so-called gentleman there will have to have some security clearance. And that means that they more or less likely are a member, not of a representative of a state, but a member of a secret order. So that is just exoteric here, smiling in front of the camera, but it has nothing to do with the things going on. You see here somebody who is a Knight of Malta. You see here somebody who is a Knight of Columbus. What does that have to do with the representative of the country, I ask you? And we're talking about 60 years before, and don't think for just a moment that the situation has improved. No, it's the other way around. There are certain criteria when you can become a representative of the state, but you're just more or less an actor. You act as if, but secretly you are having another agenda.
Yeah, Michael, it's all about appearances.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah, and so compare, please, that symbol here with the symbol on top of London's Downing Street, where the Premier Minister is residing and living and doing his work. Yeah, sure. It's all the same. Some say, oh yeah, that's a Jesuitical in that the sun rays. Yeah, it can also be a Venus shell, but it's apparently it's something else. They have something in common, huh? Something they have in common. It's not the New World, the American island, United States. It's not the New World. It has been known long before Columbus. Columbus did not invent anything or discover anything. He just wanted to proclaim that it's now the Roman Catholic possession, America. That's the thing. Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah. So the Jesuits are not owning also the Mormons, but in my humble opinion, the Jesuits are ruling the sovereign military order of Malta, which would place them 2 steps at least behind, or above, sorry, 2 steps above the Freemasonry thing. So don't think for just a moment that it was the letter or the knowledge or the intention of Mr. Albert Pike. Albert Pike was also controlled because he was just a Grandmaster of Freemasonry or just a 33-degree Freemason. But what is he wearing here? And also, why is he just giving out that valuable information to somebody else? And that means that there are somebody who are behind Mr. Albert Pike. And that's why I don't go into the speculation of a letter to Mazzini. But it's just me, you see? It is just me. The one behind it in the United States of America is most likely Mr. Pierre-Jean de Smet. He was a Roman Catholic missionary. Mission is a name for Jesuits sending out agents. From Belgium, he was a Jesuit and he was making propaganda in the northwest of the United States, and he was being seen as a friend of your Indian chief, Sitting Bull. De Smet was recognized for having greater influence with the Indians than any other white man. De Smet, who was trusted by the Indians, had to convince them to peacefully agree to relocate to reservations or face extermination. Yeah, and what was going on in that reservations, you better not ask. And of course, he wanted to have the land for these people who were then paying taxes and all the things. I don't think for just 1 second that he was doing it out of love for the people. But just don't have to erect any images or idols. But this is Pierre-Jean de Smet. I need to remind you that soldier Pierre-Jean de Smet, the Society of Jesus, or Regimini Militantis Ecclesia, the militant regime of the church, was the controller of Albert Pike, the once sovereign grand commander of the ancient and accepted Scottish Rite. The very rite which the Aragon Templars, as known as Society of Jesus, that is debatable here. The Aragon is a part of a northern part of Spain, actually, and you know that Ignatius of Loyola was a Spanish nobleman, created in Paris, France, and was aided by their Hohenzollern protector Frederick the Great of Prussia. And that could also mean that Frederick the Great was being seen and highly regarded by our dictator, or the Austrian actually dictator. He was not a German, but an Austrian dictator, Adolf Hitler. Yeah, why he was worshipping Frederick the Great? Because Frederick the Great was among Catherine the Great of Russia, was one of the few leaders in Europe who were protecting the Jesuits when they were forbidden. On the one hand, it was Catherine the Great. On the other hand, it was somebody from Quebec in Canada, if I remember correctly. But if you don't know it, you have only to ask Mr. Trudeau, because he is Jesuitically trained.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly what I thought when you brought that up.
Yeah, and Frederick the Great from Prussia. So these people were protecting the Jesuits.
Isn't that something, you know?
And this Austrian dictator, please, sorry to interrupt, but this Austrian dictator who was ruling Germany for 12 years, Adolf Hitler, he was backed up financially big time by the United States of America, also by Prescott Bush, the grandfather of George W. Bush, and also he was admiring Mr. Frederick the Great, and he said that his chief of the Secret Service, Heinrich Himmler, was his Ignatius of Loyola. And he also said in a book in German that his secret service or secret army, the SS, the Protection Army, was modeled after the Jesuit order. So these are admirers of Jesuits, Frederick the Great and Adolf Hitler, so the Austrian dictator. And that's why he was being put in power. He was just a regular soldier. He was nothing special. He was not a general. He was nothing. He was just a workless painter. That's what he was from profession. He could not do anything but to shout. And that's enough. You see that as an actor. He's an actor. And you have all the symbolic things in Germany from the German Wehrmacht in the Second World War, from the cross and from the army and the eagle, etc., etc., etc. Yeah, that's all the similarities. Please, Brett.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say, you know, kind of the background I have, I don't know, of you know, Canada. They've always struck me as having this kind of arrogance, and Trudeau just is, with recently what's going on with World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab, and you know, he's part of their inner group of candidates that Klaus Schwab has handpicked, along with, who else is a part of that now? There was someone mentioned recently that was surprising, that was a part of that group of people that they have trained for this, you know,
young global leaders, or what?
Yeah, young global leaders, correct. Yes. Yeah, I forget the other fella that was part of that, but yeah, the Jesuits. Yeah, that's pretty much sums it up, doesn't it?
So the website is explaining the Jesuits do everything in their power to direct you away from themselves being the creator of the Scottish Rite, which the almost well-known politicians are members of the highest degrees, such as Knight of Malta, Tony Blair, Bill Clinton, and Knight of Malta, George Herbert Walker Bush, who was also a director of the CIA. The Rite was created by the Aragon Templars so they could take over and usurp Scottish Templarism of the Sinclair family in a very similar manner on how Catholicism usurped and took over Christianity.
Wow.
If that is correct, because there's a debate about that Sinclair thing. You see, the Jesuits believe they're the only Knight Templars because their origin in the Kingdom of Aragon was accepted and allowed by the Pope of Rome. The Pope of Rome also allowed that they took over the Inquisition from the Dominicans. So they had a supreme status in the line of orders of the Roman Catholic Church. And also a member of the Knights of Columbus is not only George Herbert Walker Bush, there is a point missing, but also Joseph Kennedy, of course. And I think that is not a coincidence that the Lord of the Rings, the main character, the king that has returned, is from Aragon. The name is Aragorn, so there's an R. It's not Aragon, but Aragorn. Oh my. My. And of course, he has been knighted after these movies were being published. 3 movies, Lord of the Rings, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, he has been knighted. Yeah, he has been knighted in Denmark. Yeah. Together with Christopher Lee, who then was acting as the evil sorcerer, and Ian McGallen, he was acting as the good sorcerer, and Ian Holm, who was acting as Bilbo, the hero. So that means there are 4 actors who are now being called officially Knights of the British Empire or Knights of the Danish Empire. They are knights. Yeah, they serve a certain order, a Catholic order. So it's a Catholic movie. Yeah, Lord of the Rings. No, what a coincidence! There are 3 parts of that. Yeah. The second part is the 2 Towers from 2002, and that was 2002 when the 2 towers in New York City were being falling down in real time. Yeah, in 2001. So they were not standing in 2002, but maybe the movie was shot in 2001. I don't know.
Sounds right.
So there's a speculation where the Scottish Knight Templars are coming from. Is it St. Clair or is it not? Somebody says yes. It's Wyndham St. Clair of Roslin became the first Grand Master of the Lodge. But there's another doctor, Louis G. Oman, points out that the Knight Templars connection is false. And then, according to Freemason John Walker, later William Sinclair of Roslin became the first Grand Master. So whom to believe? Whom to believe? But what we know is that Ignacio Lopez de Unas de Loyola was of nobility, a Basque country of northeastern Spain. Yeah, in the Castle Loyola. Castle, yeah? He was not the layman. The Castle of Loyola. Oh, he had a castle. Not Lola, Loyola. Birthplace of Saint. Oh, he's a saint, okay. He's a saint. Birthplace, Basilica. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, and people claim that the Emperor Juan Carlos also is a Grand Master with his blood ties to the Farnese papal nobility. You see that birds of a feather flock together. Yeah, and also Scottish Rite was not only created by the Templar Jesuits, they say, it has been said, but also the Ku Klux Klan. K is the 11th letter, so 3 times 11, so 33, Ku Klux Klan. I think that it's a word which every healthy American would never come up with. Ku Klux Klan. It's, oh my. Yeah. So if that is correct or not, I don't care, because it is not part of our ritual here of Kennedy. I'm sorry that I have to spoil so many things here. Yeah, there are so many people behind that. It is Alexander Haig, honorary Knight of Malta. Ronald Reagan signed a concordat with the Pope, which we say officially ended the overt diplomatic relations problem with the Vatican, at least, to say the least. Yeah, and maybe it has also been stopped in 1868, but that is a part of American history then. So welcome to the land of Gaga illusions. Yeah, yeah, it's all illusions. It's all illusions. But I can tell you that it was not the Scottish Rite who killed John F. Kennedy. It was just the Scottish Rite who allowed to take that the assassination could take place in the temple, or they had to obey their superiors actually. Yeah. So it can be true that there are some people involved, but if they were the City of London involved, the City of London also has been founded by the Knights Templars. And the Sovereign Military Order of Malta is not anything but the succession of the Knights Templars. So when you come with the City of London Corporation, or City of London, then it has been controlled by the Knights Templars. And if you remember, the so-called Banker of God killing, the Banker of God, Roberto Calvi, when we have spoken about that on the Blackfriars Bridge. Yeah. That means that it was a Freemason ritual, because he was hanged on an orange cord, for example, but, and it's a big but, it happened in London. And in London, it is when he's got ties with the Vatican Bank and the Mafia, Mafia Mazzini, Propaganda Dui being also a Freemason thing, then it was a Freemason so-called accident or officially a suicide, but it was a murder actually. It happened in London, and in the square mile London where all the banks are, it's been controlled by the Knights Templar. So once again, the Knights Templars have control over a part of a country which officially is Protestant. And the Knights Templars have, of course, also the control of the Freemasonry in the United Kingdom. So much so. Yeah. So I don't care, because you see that you cannot prove anything. You only have to use common sense from that on. What I found very hilarious funny is that the modern Santa Claus allegedly was taken off Albert Pike. And the red and white coloring of his character comes from the Central Intelligence Agency, so the Suriname Knights of Malta, by way of their front company, Coca-Cola, the cocaine peddler for Emperor Juan Carlos of Spain, who controls the entire South America with the priesthood of Lucifer. I think there is some resemblance, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Drink Coca-Cola. Hot weather, headache. Yeah, the best brain and nerve drink. Yeah, sure. And the problem is that the receptory, so the ingredients of that drink is still a secret. Yeah. So, but where does Coca come from? And they will tell you that Coca-Cola is nothing more than a refreshing soda. But there are processes that Ashton traces in a detailed essay on his Medium page, outlining the path from molecule to market and putting one of the most iconic American products within an entirely more technical light. And in case that you're wondering, the formula does call for coca leaf, but according to Ashton, this ingredient is processed in a unique United States government authorized factory in New Jersey to remove its addictive stimulant cocaine. Yeah? Hence Coca-Cola, cocaine, cola.
And why did they remove it? So they can sell it somewhere else.
Oh, that's on the one hand, but you see that in Germany, for example, it has been rumored and it has been proven that in the German Reichstag, which is the German parliament, in 2000 there were traces of cocaine found in the toilet. Yeah, so that means maybe some supreme beings, they received the real Coca-Cola, or the real cocaine, actually. Yeah, you can go in endlessly. You can ask Bill Hughes about it, but I won't just go into the interesting things now. The 45-year-old engineer Charles Bronson, not to be exchanged with the actor Charles Bronson on that particular day, was heading towards Dealey Plaza with two cameras, and they stood on a concrete pedestal, once again, in Dealey Plaza at the southwest corner of Main and Houston. When ambulance arrived in the plaza to pick up an epileptic seizure victim few minutes before the motorcade reached the area, Bronson filmed a short sequence, not realizing that he has captured a portion of the Texas School Book Depository building on film. As the presidential limousine drew near, Bronson filmed another brief sequence with his home movie camera before switching to take two still photographs of the car approaching to the turn onto Houston Street. Switching cameras again, he filmed the limousine as it traveled north on Houston Street. He was holding his Leica camera, ready to take another still, when the first shot was fired and he instinctively snapped the photograph. Within seconds, as the shooting continued, Bronson raised his home movie camera. His 2-second clip captured the fatal shot to Kennedy. What I found very interesting is that the fact that there was somebody who had a seizure and a few minutes before the assassination took place. And that was also being captured by Oliver Stone, whom I suppose to be a Jesuit coadjutor. Oliver Stone's JFK. So what really happened that day, because that epileptic seizure happened around 12:15, so 15 minutes before the assassination took place. Maybe to distract the police, making it easier for the shooters to move to their places. Maybe, just maybe. I have another idea, but the epileptic later vanished, never checking into the hospital, because that individual has been identified as Jerry Belknap. And that Jerry Belknap has made an interesting remark, because I don't go into every nitty-gritty here, an interesting remark. First of all, he has been covered on that transcript from the Dallas police on that November day on the assassination of Kennedy. That's the first hint. Yeah. So that is in chronological order from 1215. So when that seizure that had been taken place. So this is the official channel 1. Of course, there are other channels, but this is the official channel, the usual channel here, channel 1. Let's look it up. Give us an ambulance, 1218. Give us an ambulance, 100 block north, Houston Street, epileptic seizure. So that happened in 1218, confirmed, when that is correct, at the official Dallas Police radio. Okay. So then back to the script. This is from the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Please remember that the head of that department is a high-ranking Freemason called J. Edgar Hoover. And now this is supposed to be official document. So that Mr. Jerry Boyd Belknap, at approximately 12:10 p.m., Belknap advised he felt a fainting spell coming on and attempted to move back away from the crowd. While in process of moving from his position, Belknap said he fainted and fell to the sidewalk. Within a few minutes of fainting, Belknap stated an ambulance from what else? Funeral directors arrived and took him in the ambulance to Parkland Memorial Hospital. That is the same hospital where JFK was being transported to. Belknap said he does not believe he lost consciousness. Okay, so but he has been taken to the hospital in an ambulance. So much so that this is FBI here. He stated, shortly after the ambulance attendants carried him on the stretcher into Parkland Memorial Hospital, President Kennedy was brought into the hospital. He advised there was much confusion at the hospital and little attention was being paid to him. He said he got a glass of water from a nurse and took his medication, which he is required to take 3 times daily, but had neglected to do so on this particular day. Brett. Smelling something.
I don't know. You got me, Michael.
He said he got a glass of water from a nurse and took his medication, which he is required to take 3 times daily, but had neglected to do so on this particular day. So he was used to be an epileptic and he had to take in medication, as far as I remember, as I'm understanding it there. But he had neglected to do so on this particular day. After taking this medication, Belknap stated he felt much better, informed the nurse of this, and walked out of the hospital without ever registering as a patient. And you think that is a coincidence? That 15 minutes before the well-known assassination of the 20th century took place, there is somebody who has a seizure, especially in the Dealey Plaza. What a coincidence. And then that FBI document states that he was required to take 3 times daily, but had neglected to do so on this particular day.
So he did it on purpose.
I don't know, but many people are suggesting that he has some ties to the CIA and that he was used as a distraction. It happened in Dealey Plaza. 15 minutes before, or according to the Dallas Police radio, it was at 12:18 when they picked up the police call. Give us an ambulance, 12:18. So that means that the ambulance had to drive there, or just to be prepared. So these were just minutes before Kennedy was arriving, and I don't think that is a coincidence. At 12:18, 12 minutes before the assassination took place, police was asking to inform an ambulance. North Houston Street. Yeah, this is a so-called FBI document. This is 100 North Houston Street. Remember that Mr. Charles Bronson filmed that, and he was in Dealey Plaza. So that was here, North Houston Street. Yeah, you see where that is. Yeah, that is Dealey Plaza.
Yeah, that's right.
You think that is a coincidence? Yes. Okay. Yeah, you really think? I don't think so. I don't think so that that kind of coincidences are really happening. Yeah. I think that these things are not happening on coincidence. But we will see in the later sessions. Yeah, you will see. That is the film from Bronson, and you see where he was located. He was just located on North Houston Street. Now you see, this is the Texas School Book Depository, and the seizure had to be somewhere here. Yeah, 100 North Houston Street. Yeah, so he was filming here, and that seizure appeared something like here. So it was in his view, and so the ambulance had to pick him up here and had to drive him to the Parkland Hospital. Yeah, so they were using, of course, the highway. They were using either the Elm Street, but I highly doubt it. I think they were using the Main Street because he was not supposed to die. And that's not a joke. And that's why I came up with that interesting documentation of Mr. James Shelby Downyard's vision of King Kill 33 degrees. It's a very interesting research. It has much to do with Freemason symbology. Much to do with it. It's freely available on the internet if you would like to go into this. Yeah. So there's also a short version of it. It has about 40 pages or so. It's very interesting. He has very interesting insights also. He's, it was very interesting to finish the Kennedy ritual after we will go extensively in all the other happenings there. And the next session we will go into the Secret Service, and then we will go into Lee Harvey Oswald and why, how, he, and etc. And then we will see why that happened to your president, John F. Kennedy. And I hope that we will come up with so many interesting things for you to look behind the curtain, which usual researchers will not do because they don't see the clerical or the church behind all the things, or the orders behind all the things. Yeah. Despite having been relentlessly targeted and attacked for more than half a century, Mr. Downyard, unlike poor Kennedy, did trip the Herodim on the winding stairs and did slide down the railing like a child, etc., etc., etc. So it is a very interesting read, and we will go into this now. King Kennedy killed 33 degree. Mason symbolicism, Masonic symbolicism in the assassination of JFK, 1998. The information I present in these pages on the Kennedy assassination is well known to certain news agencies who have chosen to suppress it, just as the motivation for the assassination has been plunged into cryonic secrecy. Masonic betrayal of the common man involves archetypes of fertility and death symbolism, seeming motivated to bring about syncretism, opposing principles in order to green Israel, rebuild of the Temple of Solomon, establish one world government. This is 1998, even before the World Trade Center attacks happened. It is by way of Masonic sorcery that the union of opposing principles is supposed to be brought about. The criminals who stage-managed Dallas and the killing of Kennedy have controlled the American people will in exchange for sleep without nightmares. I published this in the wake of the situation Charles Seymour alluded to, quote, unquote, the moralist unquestionably secures wide support, but he also varies his audience. Most Americans are beyond being tired, the revelations have benumbed them. Most Freemasons apparently have no idea of the evil part that is part of Masonry, and if they do know about it, they don't believe it. The same holds true for most members of the clandestine lodges and Masonic-oriented fraternal organizations, as well as androgynous Masonic societies. It is certain that onomatology, the science of names, forms a very interesting part of the investigation of the higher Masonry. When the ancients saw a scapegoat, they could at least recognize him for what he was, a pharmakos, a human sacrifice. When modern man sees one, he does not or refuses to recognize him for what he is. Instead, he looks for scientific explanations to explain away the obvious. Pharmakos was in antique Greece a human sacrifice for a greening ritual. A pharmakos, a human sacrifice. Never heard of that before.
No, I haven't either.
Yeah, that was very interesting. You see, pharmakeia. That sheds a different light.
It sure does, doesn't it?
A pharmakos. This is a German thriller from Andreas Laudern called Pharmakos. It's been about the organization then who is trying to kill the people. It's very interesting. You see that it means when the bomb is ticking inside you. And I think it's a very recent thing, Pharmakos, don't you think? The science of names word wizardry forms only one segment of the science of symbolism used by Masons. The JFK assassination encounters this science in a decisive way and contains a revelatory nightmare of symbol complexes having to do with violence, perversion, conspiracy, death, and degradation. These elements are important not only as cause and effect in the murder of a president, but in the ensuing reaction of the people of America and the world. The fertility and death symbolism in the killing of the king rite, which is part of greening ritualism, has to do with JFK, has been suppressed because examination of it must necessarily link to its Freemasonry and its mysticism, as well as to the political influence it exerts. Obviously, this would do some damage to public confidence in A, Masonic progressivism, so liberty, equality, fraternity, B, those who have shielded the conspirators, 3, the entire mental concept that passes for knowledge about the genuine nature of the government of the United States. Yeah, so there are many rituals to save the planet and to get rid of human corpses and green death movements. We're not going into this. Mystical toponymy incorporates word wizardry and the Masonic science of symbolism. In considering my data, it would be helpful to consider a dictum of Einsteinian physics. Time relations among events are assumed to be first constituted by the specific physical relations obtaining between them, unquote. Oh, no, I'm not going into this. But it gets interesting. Let us take an example at the Mason Road in Texas that connects to the Mason Noel Bar and the Texas-New Mexico, the land of enchantment border. This connecting line is on the 32nd degree. The 32nd degree is the penultimate Masonic degree awarded. When this 32nd degree of latitude is traced west into the land of enchantment, it becomes situated midway between Deming and Columbus, New Mexico. Slightly to the north of the town of Columbus are the Tres Hermanas, Three Sisters Mountains. It is approximately 32 miles between Deming and Columbus. The Three Sister Mountains are a minute and some seconds south of the 32nd degree line. When this line is traced further west, it passes the ghost town of Shakespeare. Distance south of the town, which is roughly equivalent to the distance which the 32nd degree line passes north of the Three Sister Mountains. The names Shakespeare and Three Sisters find a connection in the tragedy Macbeth. It's a tragedy of William Shakespeare. I said, oh, that is interesting. Macbeth, William Shakespeare. Macbeth, William. I forgot to do that in English. It dramatizes the damaging physical and psychological effects of political ambition on those who seek power. Of all the plays that Shakespeare wrote during the reign of James I, Macbeth most clearly reflects his relationship with King James, patron of Shakespeare's acting company. It was first published in the folio of 1623, possibly from a prompt book, and is Shakespeare's shortest tragedy. A brave Scottish general, remember Scottish, right, named Macbeth receives a prophecy from a trio of witches that one day he will become king of Scotland. Consumed by ambition and spurred by action by his wife, Macbeth murders King Duncan and takes the Scottish throne for himself. He is then racked with guilt and paranoia. Forced to commit more and more murders to protect himself from enmity and suspicion, he soon becomes a tyrannic ruler. The bloodbath and consequent civil war swiftly take Macbeth and Lady Macbeth into the realms of madness and death. But we highly doubt that William Shakespeare wrote anything, because we highly doubt the existence of that William Shakespeare. So that is another ghostwriter. And you know that most ghostwriting people are in the clergy. Interesting. Macbeth, interesting. Shakespeare's source for the story is the account of Macbeth, King of Scotland, Macduff, and Duncan in Holinshin's Chronicles, a history of England, Scotland, and Ireland familiar to Shakespeare and his contemporaries. or his ghostwriters, although the events in the play differ extensively from the history of the real Macbeth. The events of the tragedy are usually associated with the execution of Henry Garnier for complicity in the gunpowder plot of 1605. And the gunpowder plot was to annihilate the English Parliament officially. What a coincidence, huh? On a 32nd degree latitude, etc. And the three witches
associated with Henry Garnet, really?
Yes. Yeah, it's just Wikipedia. I'm just quoting Wikipedia at the moment.
Isn't that something?
Yeah, it gets better and better now. I'm getting warm up, you see? And these three witches there is also a depiction of the three witches of Eastwick, of course. Yeah. And these three witches then on that play here come from the ancient Greek religion and mythology, the Moray, ancient Greek. Aha. So mythology. It's like Homer. You see that Homer never wrote Odysseus. Yeah, you see that Homer is also such a fantasy name. Many people debate if he has ever lived. That was something to do with witches, sorcery, witchcraft, or magic. Magic. Yeah. So many things. You can't imagine. Yes, you see. You can't imagine where does it all end. You see that. In the ancient Greek, there's also ananke. Yeah, that means force, constraint, or necessity. It's necessary to fight. Even the gods don't fight against ananke. That is, of course, ananke, a personification of necessity and inevitability. Member of the Greek primordial deities, ananke. Yeah, that's her modern illustration of Plato's Republic. Oh, are you a republic? Republic is also something from Greek origin. Yeah, her symbol, of course, is a torch or spindle. Yeah, sure. It's always the same. Yeah. Fire. I teach you to burn. You see, the fire is always the god of destruction, huh? A torch, a spindle. Yeah, of course. It's always a torch. You see that it's a god of destruction. Yeah, you see that. Look at the obelisk in Dealey Plaza. Yeah, obelisk Dealey Plaza also has a flame on top, or a symbolized flame on top. Sure. Look at the grave of Kennedy. Yeah, there's also a flame on top. Grave Kennedy, eternal flame. Yeah, then the Bangles come playing. An eternal flame. Yeah, it's always the same. Yeah, if flame or fire means destruction. Eternal flame. And it has also some other. You see, the round thing is a female. That is a male symbol. But yeah, let's not go into this. With the 32nd degree line, it strays a little distance farther west into Arizona. It crosses an old trail which meandered north of what is now another ghost town, but which at one time was called the town of Ruby. James Ruby, anybody? His real name was James Rubenstein, the Jew. Of course, always a Jew to blame. Part of the old winding trail became known as the Ruby Road. Once again, 32nd degree. The town of Ruby acquired its name officially on April the 11th, Freemason 11th, and was notorious for many brutal murders which had ritual aspects. Yeah, it's the same which came up in the killing of Mr. Lee Harvey Oswald. Out in the open. Ruby, Arizona is one of the best preserved ghost towns in the state, filled with history, including lawlessness, murder, and mayhem, not to mention dozens of great photographic opportunities. Yep, great opportunity. Yeah. But there's much more to it. Oh, there are many, many, many criminals there. Ruby, Arizona. It's all just a coincidence. But this is just a session of coincidences. The town of Ruby, so drenched in blood, petitions to the US War Department for protection, which stamped out the threat of bandit raids. Ruby lived on, albeit quietly, for the next couple of years. Unbelievable, the store sold again. It was run by a named Worthington, who operated it for a couple of years. Yeah, and so many things were going on. Murders and bloodshedding all the day. They had a mine there who ran 24 hours a day, only closing at Christmas and July the 4th. Yeah, these are the two main festival holy days. Yeah. Yeah. It is very strange, Pat, because I stumbled across the information that in 1940, it was the same year when Mr. Rubenstein changed his name officially in Ruby. But it's just maybe a coincidence. Oh, there's not much more to it. It's much more to it. And Ruby is not haunted, let me tell you. And with this bloody history, it would come as no surprise if this old ghost town is haunted. No. But search as I might, I could find no stories or tales of any spirituals going on there. You see, these are people who have absolutely just journalists here, maybe. I really like the explanation of Mr. Downyard, but you see that I'm not knowing what kind of religion he has. But let's just proceed. Let's just proceed. An old-timer said, "Oh, Tio Pedro died years ago. He predicted evil for the occupants of the post office because it was built over an old padre's grave." That was the evil thing to do, to build a house over an old priest grave. Okay. But so much so, and now you please compare that to this. And I said, oh, that's a real hit. Officially, Mr. Jack Ruby said, "I'm no hero, I did it for Jackie." Yeah, sure. What does Jackie has to have for a benefit? Because her husband was already killed. You see, that is not a benefit to kill his murder. But, and that now comes a big but, you see on the right, you see the Dallas Morning News. And what do we know about the Dallas Morning News? Who was the first editor of the Dallas Morning News, or the publisher of the Morning News? It was Mr. Dealey from the Dealey Plaza, and he was a high-ranking Freemason. So you know that the Dallas Morning News, which I have been stated much ago for the weather report, or that Johnson was not running in 1964, and all the things, that the Dallas Morning News is a newspaper of the Freemasons, Brett. And what do they tell you here in that headline?
Club owner kills Oswald.
Yeah. And the club owners usually are being part of some mobster. But that's not the big thing. The big thing is above. Thousands pay homage. And then, Brett, can you read that?
I can't.
Thousands pay homage. I can enlarge it maybe.
Thank you. Yeah, now it's better.
Yeah.
Oh, to martyred president.
To martyred president. And that is what a Freemason newspaper is telling you. 2 days after the assassination of John F. Kennedy. A martyred president. Martyred means put to death as punishment for adherence to some religious belief. So that Freemason newspaper is admitting you that John F. Kennedy was killed for religious purposes, or for his religious belief. Oh, that's too far-fetched, you might say. Yeah, well, I don't know. That happened in a Freemason temple. And there was a ritual. And that is what they actually are admitting here. A martyred president. And that happened here. Almost. In the distance to the left is the railroad bridge over Commerce, Main, and Elm. 1, 2, 3. To the right of those streets, there is the walkway to the Martyrs Park. And that is from the opposite direction. You see here, this is Elm, Main, and Commerce. Martyrs Park to the left here, looking east back towards Old Red Courthouse. Courthouse Square, where Old Red is located now, was scene of hanging of Jane Elkins, a 53-year-old grandmother and slave who had killed her caretaker. It is suspected she was responding to sexual abuse of herself or her children. It has something to do with death here, huh? Death penalties. And this is a Martyrs Park where John F. Kennedy had to come across. Sure. Yeah. It's interesting because it's all ritual. It's like in the town of Ruby. 4 of these homicides occurred in a store attached to the post office, which had been erected over the grave of the Catholic priest. Yeah, and we know that the Roman Catholic people are most likely into superficial beliefs, like in the apparition of Mary, or in so many things happening there. Or hoc est corpus in meo. Continuing with this mystical toponymy, one encounters the fact that Ruby Road twists north into the area known as the Kennedy and Johnson Mountains. Interesting. So the Mount Kennedy is a very high mountain in the national park and has been named to Kennedy in 1965 by the Canadian government, according to the United States President John F. Kennedy. Has been visited on the top of the mountain on the 24th of March 1964 through Senator Robert F. Kennedy, the younger brother of JFK. And he has then been installed there some personal items in remembrance to his killed brother, or his murdered brother. The Johnson Mountains is supposedly named after the general manager of the Peabody Mining Company. The 32 or 32nd degree of latitude is but a few seconds from Johnson. Yeah, and you see all the coincidences here. Of course, Johnson is a very household name in Texas, so you're not going anywhere with that. But it's just very interesting. It's very interesting. He makes also some reference to Fredericksburg. Fredericksburg has been the location of the house of the rising sun. You see, the rising sun is Osiris. The sun is rising in the east, we have learned. And this is also the same theme as the animals here in their famous song, House of the Rising Sun. When the first line of that song has been, there is a house in New Orleans. And New Orleans happened to be the town where Lee Harvey Oswald was in 1963. So many coincidences. Yes, the whole House of the Rising Sun, a Masonic meeting place for such notables as founding fathers George Washington and Benjamin Franklin of the Hellfire Club fame. So what do they do in the Hellfire Club? Yeah, lighting cigarettes or what? And I think maybe the animals, they knew they had something to do with Freemasonry, most likely, because they are worshipping the House of the Rising Sun. It's all Freemasonry. Of course, you're living in a Freemason country. Yeah, actually, you're living in a Catholic country, but nobody will admit it unless it's too late. Unless it's too late. Yeah. So the killing of the king. Mr. Downyard says, and that is a very, very good sentence. He said, sorcery is not what 20th century man can accept as real. Interesting enough is that they had to accept the so-called single bullet theory, which later became the magic bullet theory. So they had to accept sorcery, Thus, the killing of the king riot in November 1963 is alternately diagnosed as a conflict. Yeah, because people want to have a scientific explanation. They don't believe the obvious things that it was a ritual. The ultimate purpose of that assassination was not political or economic, but sorcery, for the control of the dreaming mind and the marshalling of its forces to the omnipotent force in this entire scenario of lies, cruelty, and degradation. So that is his explanation. I got some other explanation, but I found that line very fitting, with sorcery is not what 20th century man can accept as real. Yeah, religion or belief or Bible is also not what 20th century man can accept as real, Brett,
That's more like it, Michael.
Yeah, and they did so much sorcery in the Bible. Remember the Egyptian pharaoh, for example. Or Simon.
We're talking 21st century now, so
now,
it's even different.
Yeah.
But I suppose he meant late 20th century, which is about the same thing.
Yeah, and I found that very interesting here. Yeah. Kennedy and his wife left Temple Houston were met at midnight by tireless crowd present to cheer the virus sun god. So Kennedy being seen as the sun god and his dazzling erotic wife, the queen of love and beauty in Fort Worth. On the morning of November the 22nd, they flew to gate 28 at Lafayette Dallas. The number 28 is one of the correspondences of Solomon in Kabbalistic numerology. The Solomonic name assigned to 28 is Beel. I have not got into this, but I just want to present you that if you want to go in that route. On the 28th degree of latitude in the state of Texas is the site of what was once the giant Kennedy Ranch. On the 28 degrees also Cape Canaveral, from which the allegedly moon flight was never launched, made impossible, not only by the president's various feats, but by his death as well. For the placing of Freemasons on the moon, as Buzz Aldrin, could occur only after the killing of the king. The 28th degree of temporism is the king of the sun degree. The president and first lady arrived in Air Force One, codenamed Angel. Oh, there's so much things going on. The motorcade proceeded from Lafayette, that's the airport in Dallas, to Dealey Plaza. Dealey Plaza is the site of the Masonic Temple in Dallas, now raised, and there is a marker, yeah, we know that, attesting to this fact in the plaza. Important protective strategy for Dealey Plaza was planned by the New Orleans CIA station. New Orleans, once again, remember, Lee Harvey Oswald was in New Orleans in 1963 in summer. Was planned by the New Orleans CIA station, whose headquarters were the Masonic Temple building. Dallas, Texas is located 10 miles north of the 33 degree of latitude. The 33 degree is the highest in Freemasonry, and the founding lodge of the Scottish Rite America was created in Charleston, South Carolina, exactly on the 33rd degree line. Dealey Plaza is close to the Trinity River at 12:22 p.m. That is his time. It was actually a few minutes later, more or less. The motorcade proceeded down Main Street towards the Triple Underpass, traveling first down the so-called Bloody Elm Street. The latter was the scene of numerous gunfights, stabbings, and other violence, and is the location of the Majestic Theater, the pawn shop, Negro District, and Industrial District. Oh, there's so much to look upon in New Orleans and in other cities as well. It was also the home of the Blue Front Tavern, a Masonic hangout in the grand tradition of tavern masonry. Sam Adams and the Masons of the American Revolution did much of their conspiring at the Green Dragon Tavern at Boston. Yeah, why is that? Why is that? Boston, let me remind you, Massachusetts is the city where Kennedy was being born. The Green Dragon Tavern. One of the many bars claiming the honor of being the first Masonic lodge is the Bunches of Grapes Tavern, also in Boston. The Blue Front was the site of the Broken Man Ritual, in which various members of the Brotherhood of the Broom swept the floor and tended some fiercely javelino pigs. The Blue Front was only a firehouse and was still sporting its fire pole in the late 1920s. This is extremely germane symbolism. The national offices of the Texaco, all corporations, are located on Elm Street, Dallas. Oh, how convenient if that is correct, because that's also Mr. Bird, who was an oil millionaire, who was then the owner of the Texas School Book Depository. And we know about this claim of Madam Brown, the lover of Mr. Johnson, the later president then, that she said that they met at Clinton Merchant's, an oil millionaire's home, that Kennedy won't embarrass them the day after. So it's all about oil in Dallas, and when there is a Texas Oil Corporation located on Elm Street in Dallas, it's very much fitting. Yeah. In chief products are Haviland Javelino oil and Fire Chief gasoline. On the corner of Bloody Elm and Houston is the so-called Sexton building. Sexton is heavily laden with graveyard connotations. It is closely associated to the beetles of the genus Necrophorus or Sexton beetles, so-called because they bury the remains of tiny animals with their eggs. And that is the Sexton building. Did you see that building before?
Oh, yeah.
So, Bloody Elm, Maine, and Commerce form a trident pattern in alignment with the Triple Underpass, as any Dallas map will show. Oh yeah, that even the map that I have come across here, that map shows a trident pattern. Okay? And here is that 6th floor museum or school book depositorium or John Sexton. That's here. Many analysts contend that at least 3 assassins were involved in a crossfire ambush of Kennedy. Sure, when you see that is a triple trident symbol, and a trident means also 666, so trilateral mission, and also Mr. Jim Mars, who, in my humble opinion, is also a specialist in disinformation because he does not point the finger to the people behind the people. Then it has to be a crossfire of at least 3 assassins or the 3 ruffians. That would be according to the ritual. But, and it's a big but, The Warren Commission did not come with 3 assassins. They came with 3 shots. So more or less, they violated the ritual, Brett, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you see that the trident is also the pattern of many other things. These are some Italian brothers, and they have used the symbol of the Neptune fountain, and they call themselves Maserati. That's a car company, much to my regret, building very beautiful cars, but that's the thing. Yeah. It's a prime tenet of Masonry that assassins come in 3s. Masonic assassins are known in the code of the lodge as the unworthy craftsmen. Yeah. For example, one is behind the scene, Mr. Cybenek-Brzezinski, and says the grand chessboard. And now please compare that to the things that the author is telling you. Because Masonry is obsessed with Earth as game board, as the ancillary assignment necessary to facilitate the so-called game, it is inordinately concerned with railroads and railroad personnel to the extent that outside of lawyers and circus performers, no other vocation has a higher percentage of Masons than railroad workers. I don't know if that is correct. Maybe that is valid for the, or most likely valid for the lower levels. But it's very interesting. The Earth as a game board. What does Mr. Brzezinski tells you? The grand chessboard. And he's an advisor also to Kennedy, to Johnson, to Ford, I think even to Carter or so. So he has very much behind the scene knowledge here. The grand chessboard. Yeah, American
Knight
crimes.
of Malta's Zbigniew Brzezinski, Michael.
Yeah. American primacy.
Knight in plain sight.
Yes, yes.
Never told about these characters. They just, you know, are a secret society. You're not going to know about it unless you've studied them.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Huh? No other vocation has a higher percentage of Masons than railroad workers. I said, oh, stop. Then it means that these railroad workers, they had the best view. They were in the lodge. They had the bird's eye view here. They had a much better view of the scene than the people, the bystanders here. The usual people. These are the railroad workers on the triple overpass. And it has been said that there was a very famous photographer named Ike Aldkins, who was there on the private concern. Sure, I have to believe that. And he was being pushed away from the railroad because he wanted to shoot the pictures from the top of the railroad bridge of the underpass. But it was not allowed because a policeman showed up. But strangely enough, that it was no problem when several railroad workers were then watching the scene from above. That was no problem. They were there not legally, yeah, of course. But they claimed, and that is very interesting, you see that they had the best position here. They were supreme people here, right? They had the best view. So I don't know if these railroad workers are really railroad workers, but maybe there are 1 or 2 among them who had, I don't know, a better view than others. But some of them, says electrician Frank E. Riley, said 3 shots came from the trees. Yeah, you see here smoke coming out of the trees. So, very interesting. The Warren Commission, of course, ignored all the statements from the railroad workers because they knew the outcome right from the beginning, from the start. FBI failed in some cases to write about the observations of smoke in their reports. Sure, they're not used to because it was just right or clear from the beginning who did it and for what purpose. It was all scripted, of course. Because if you want to kill the American president, you don't shoot with a gun with that much smoke. You see, you have to come up with another conclusion. You don't want to be noticed. Come on. I don't fall for any of these things. I have my own conclusions about that, and I have a completed script about that, which is much more better than this script here on that episode, I must shamefully say, but nevertheless, yeah. So minutes after John F. Kennedy was murdered, 3 hobos, unworthy craftsmen, were arrested at the rail yard behind Dealey Plaza. Sure, it was the north side of Dealey Plaza. And of course, if you look at the map of the Dealey Plaza, it was the north side here, it is the east side here, the south here, and west here. You see the north side is the poor side, the side of death. Yeah, so you have the railroad there, which means that it's a transportation method for the poor people. Yeah, we're not talking about the, in a better resolution here, we're not talking about the commerce street here where all the fancy buildings and skyscrapers are here. Here is the big money. But on the other side, on the north, there has to be the poor people. Yeah, the parking lot behind the 6th floor, and then, of course, the railroad station, the railroad tracks. Yeah, it's quite easy. No records of their identities have ever been revealed, nor the identity of the arresting officer. No, it was not supposed to be. All that remains of those few minutes are a series of photographs which have reached legendary proportions among persons concerned with uncovering the real forces and persons behind the assassination. Yeah, and you see that now the Dallas Police Department tells us, oh no, they are revealing that in 1992. Yeah, sure. Dealey Plaza breaks down symbolically in this manner. Dia means goddess in Latin, and ley can pertain to the law or rule in the Spanish or line of preternatural geographical significance in the pre-Christian nature religions of the English. Wow, what a sentence. Yeah. For many years, now it gets really the stunner of this episode. For many years, Dealey Plaza was underwater at different seasons, having been flooded by the Trinity River. Remember, this is also a trinity, 1, 2, 3. And they have then, the Trinity River is now flowing more north. I cannot recall where it is here. I don't know what kind of river that is, but it's not. Okay, once again. For many years, Dealey Plaza was underwater at different seasons, having been flooded by the Trinity River until the introduction of a flood control system to this Trident Neptune site. Ta-ta-ta-ta. And that is not Dealey Plaza.
Oh, looks like World Trade.
Yeah, sure it is. It is the World Trade. Symbols are key to solving crimes. For example, the Operation Neptune Spear is the operation for the killing of Osama bin Laden, because the Neptune Spear also is the symbol of the United States Navy SEALs. Oh, they are using a Roman god, Neptune. What does that mean when your special forces are using a Roman god's name? And also the breakdown of the German war between West and East happened on the 9th of November, and that's what we are depicting, that 9/11, 9/11, 1989. It's all the same. And breaking down a wall has nothing to do with Freemasons, huh? No, nothing, huh? Nothing. This is the picture of pictures for me. You see here the symbolism of the Dealey Plaza into the structure of the World Trade Center. It's all the same. All rituals are the same. It is not for the static or for aesthetic or what else purposes they do that. No, this is just a veneration of old gods and goddesses. That's a Trinity symbol. If you go for Isis, Horus, and Set, or if you go for anything else, for Babylonian Trinity, I don't care, but it's a Trinity symbol. It is. It's nothing less, nothing more. It's a Trinity symbol. And what is Neptune actually? Neptune is the god of fountains and waterfalls in Roman religion. Neptune is the brother of Jupiter and Pluto. The brothers preside over the realms of heaven, the earthly world, and the underworld. Oh, the god of fountain spread.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to go into that Dallas session.
Place, yeah.
The fountain place, yes.
Mm.
And here is the Elm Street.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's all the same. That's why they had to come up with the fountain place. The god of fountains. Yeah. Symbols are key to solving crimes. It's absolutely spot on. And now you know that it's not Neptune, Because Neptune is also not only the god of fountains, it's also the god of the underworld, and so that is one-to-one the same as Osiris. It's the same. You're just exchanging the names. Neptune is Roman, Poseidon would be Greek, and then Osiris would be Egyptian. It's always the same. You see, when it is a god of the sea, then it is under the earth, because the sea is very deep. Yeah, they depict it as the god of the underworld, and also it's a Trinity symbol, of course. Yeah, it's all symbolism, numerology. Yeah? Of the temple Poseidon, you see, that's always the same. Here a lodge, there a lodge. They are naming themselves after a pagan god. Yeah, and this is no BS. Yeah, these disinformation sheets are BS. Yeah, because they have a significance. Yeah, it's a symbol for the sun. Also, that swastika is a symbol for the sun, and it's a symbol for the one-eye god or the incomplete god. Yeah, and that's a symbol of Neptune, Poseidon, and also of Osiris, and it has a big meaning, of course. Otherwise, why would they have put it on the World Trade Center? It's always the same. And the pentagram is a symbol for Satan, and not only for the Venus. Yeah, so it's so much disinformation out there. Yeah, swastika is not only for the Big Dipper around the North Star. It's BS. Yeah, it's a sun symbol once again. Freemason, Eye of Providence. No, it has also nothing to do with Freemason in itself. Yeah, the symbol is much more older than Freemasonry. At least the usual Freemasonry from 1717. Yeah. Yeah, so it's all BS. It's all BS, and I hope that and it's absolutely clear when they are speaking about an evil spirit in Freemasonry, they usually depict it as Typhoon, the spirit of evil. Yeah, why it is called the Eurofighter Typhoon? Because that bird, that plane in the air that brings death, is equipped with rockets and bombs. It's not a tourist flight. It's a fighter plane. It's to destroy and to kill people and facilities. It's to destroy. It's Typhoon.
Yeah.
That's
Would
why
it be fair to say that they carry out missions in those vehicles?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Missionaries, yeah. Great.
Yeah, like Tornado. Yeah. Yeah, and so these are my things. You see, the Kennedy means ugly head or wounded head. Yeah, and so that Kennedy had a wounded head. I think I can tell that. And of course, he was a scapegoat and a sacrifice. And Oswald can also mean form of strength, and it can also mean that it has resemblance of the Wizard of Oz, which or sodomite, and of course knight of the British Empire. Elton John will never admit, because his Goodbye Yellow Brick Road is the road that Dorothy and his company is going to the Wizard of Oz. But it's not named after the Wizard of Oz. It's just been named after the Yellow Brick Road. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Brick Road. Why it is a brick road? I think you can find it out on your own. Oh, it's so easy actually, but it's so easy sometimes. Yeah. So, but everybody wants to become a knight. Even Kevin Spacey, which now has got into some serious trouble. I have learned that he was being accused of that he has raped several men. I don't know what that is, but I know that he is a knight of the British Empire, or he is a knight at least. Yeah, like Elton John, no? Like Elton John, this Yellow Brick Road. And Paul McCartney from the Beatles. Yeah, the Beatles. Also the Beatles, a very interesting poem of Aleister Crowley. And Mr. Sean Connery. All these people in the same club. Yeah? This is the Wizard of Oz on the left and the Wizard of Pseudoscience on the right. Yeah, you know this famous girl who was telling us something about gravity who does not exist on one side. Mm-hmm. It's also a green screen. It's also the Wizard of Oz home is also depicted as in light green. That's the color of the dying nature, the color of sorcery. One of the colors of them. Yeah. So these people are actors here. It's fair to say she's acting, huh? It's fair to say. She's doing as if, yeah. So it's all magic, yeah. From Disney, 666 symbolism, Disney. Yeah. So one should say also the significance of Jack Ruby's killing is destroying Oswald in reference to the ruby slippers of the Wizard of Oz. Maybe, I don't know. It's not my research at the moment, it's the research of somebody else. Yeah? Which may also be right as a fairy tale, but which nevertheless symbolizes the immense power of the ruby light, otherwise known as the laser. With the Darth Vader, which is a very negative character. Yeah. So I'm not going into every nitty-gritty which you see presenting here. I think that is it. That's but Jack Ruby is allegedly then shooting at Mr. Lee Harvey Oswald. And he's not doing it just so randomly, because he's doing it here. He's doing it exactly here. Remember, that is the place where Mr. Charles Bronson stood, and that is the place where the seizure, the epileptic seizure here happened. Yeah, but Mr. Lee Harvey Oswald was shot as also a part of a ritual here when he was exiting the police department here. And at the moment here, where here is the pavement, you see, here's the wall, here's the pavement, here's the street, here you even see a car. Yeah, that car would be here. Yeah, so when he was seeing sunlight, yeah, he was shot. It's very interesting because he was not only shot. Oh, there's so much to it. Arlington necrology. Arlington is also the word where all the people have been buried. Kennedy and Oswald were buried in Arlington. Arlington is a word significance in Masonic sorcery and mysticism, and it has a hidden meaning which ties in with necrology. It's yeah, and also it's a symbol of Visunditi. I don't know what that is, which a point symbolizing a phallus and a circular vagina. Yeah, sure it is. Yeah, and at Oswald's gravesite there's a small tree. And it has also some meaning, but please, I think we have to close it down because it's. I know that Jack Ruby has a brother, but I suspect him to be a brother too, a brother of Freemasonry. But I cannot prove that. I'm really sorry, but I would highly suggest that also this company would have something to do maybe with Freemasonry. Yeah, but I can only guess. It can only guess. Yeah, you see, there are so many things going on with symbols here with Freemasonry. It seems to be endless. It seems to be endless. So please, I'm totally tired of going into Freemasonry because it's just a bunch of distraction. A bunch of distraction. Let's have a look. I won't like to close it down with that, which we will soon go into. It's just Lee Harvey Oswald, because where was he shot? He was shot in his solar plexus, in his stomach, and most likely in his solar plexus. And then when he was facing the sun, so he was being led outside, he was facing the sun or the daylight, and then he was facing the Osiris, which is the god of the sun god. Yeah, so this is another ritual here. It did not happen randomly, but it happened in Dealey Plaza. It's also a religious killing of Lee Harvey Oswald. It's always the same. I'm sorry, I can go 20 hours, 20 sessions. What for? You see that I'm closing down the Kennedy ritual because we will look behind the organizations behind it, I would say, and we will start with the Secret Service in the next episode. And that would be very interesting when we go down the path of history. And so this is the absolute end of any Kennedy ritual. We can go from that from different perspectives, but you see there are some minor issues or some major issues even in that ritual, which has to be examined in a later session. Sorry for my bad English and my bad preparation today, but I don't know. It's a very hard thing to go into all this blood and rituals and all the things. It is not so easy as to go into one singer or one movie or one actor or so. I'm actually been a little bit off that Kennedy thing at the moment, because I really hate all that crime and all that violence been put out there and all the people being fooled for centuries. I really have to back up off something of that Kennedy. I really see how my mouth is dry when I'm talking about that thing here. It's actually disgusting me. But I'm doing it for the truth, and I'm doing it that you really see that you've been fooled big time, and many of you would suspect to being fooled big time. And it's just all not happening by coincidence. Lee Harvey Oswald was not shot by coincidence. JFK was not shot by coincidence. And I highly doubt that this epileptic seizure happened by coincidence. It all happened there in the Freemasonic temple, which has been indicated also by Osiris and Isis here. So I hope you've been fair and a true and an honest listener to the sessions here that Brett and me are putting out. I'm sorry that I did not implement any Bible verses today, but I think that it's very obvious what is going on in your American history. Just putting out the Freemasons in front, or sometimes in the case of Jack Ruby, they're putting out some Jews in front, and that's it. And just it's all about behind the scenes of secret societies, of course, using a secret service. It's the nature of things. So thank you very much for having me. I'm signing off, leaving it to my beloved brother Brett, and hope to see you again in the next session where hopefully I'm more refreshed than today. Thank you very much, and Maranatha.
Thank you, Michael. Yeah, this is definitely the case with me too. I'm really tired today as well. Didn't get good sleep last night for whatever reason. Yeah, wow, that is a big load of you know what, with Kennedy here. It's almost unbearable, isn't it, with all of the layers and layers of deception involved. And well, that's what they had to do. And yeah, I think you're right, Michael. None of it is by coincidence. None of it. Even the seizure. It all plays a part, and it all has a purpose. And that purpose was to cover up the real assassination of John F. Kennedy by the real perpetrators, which are too numerable to number, just so many. And yeah, we've looked at this from all kinds of angles so far, and I can only imagine how much farther it will go. It's just, we could spend much more time on this than we probably can bear, so to speak, because it's just absolutely astounding.
I can tell you, Brett, I have been learned that there were several fake ambulance calls in Dallas the days and before, but that is not the key thing. I will proceed to do Kennedy because I have already prepared some, I think, at least 20 sessions from now, so that you really see what is going on behind the scene and who's connecting to who. And I just want to make it one time, and then I will never do any politician again. I don't intend to. I just intend to proceed with our series, Science, the New Religion, and to do some recent stuff. That's what I'm trying to do, because actually you see that it's all over the place. It's too obvious, and you only have to read the Bible, 1 Samuel 8, to realize that you've all been betrayed if you take your faith in any politician.
Yeah, that's right, Michael. That's the devil's territory as far as I'm concerned, from what we've learned from the gospel account, of course. I forget, was it in Luke or Michael, you know, when Jesus was tempted of the devil?
It's both in Luke 4 and Matthew 4. Thank you.
Yeah, so that's exactly what we're speaking of. And yeah, I think Michael will always find opponents in this world, and people that will not agree with our positions of the way that we view things. Well, And that's just the nature of what we're dealing with, is that, there are many different ways to look at a subject, and the way that I or Michael might look at it might be a lot different than the average, what can we say, the average man. But I really appreciate the research, Michael. Appreciate you sticking through and getting right to the heart of the matter. And yeah, that is an incredible picture right there that we have right before us. Dealey Plaza on the side of the World Trade Center towers that were destroyed in September 11th, 2001. Interestingly, all these things do happen for a reason, and I think that that will be revealed in the future when we face our Maker. And right now, things are still quite confusing, but I think they become more and more apparent the more work we do. And I'm not saying, that salvation comes by works here. It's that works and salvation provide a path, and that's a narrow path. And we hope to be the few that find it. Maranatha.